Good evening, all. Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic. Basically, it's a matter of strategy and management. The topic is count your bullets before it is being fired. Means, the thing is that we need to actually count our potential. We need to count our resources before starting any kind of the journey. So actually, we have seen that many organizations, particularly startups, they fall. Means after some time of their operation, after starting of some time their operation, basically. So our important and nowadays that we find that many startups are there, and means, particularly it's going on a trend in India. So it's very important to discuss this kind of the topic. So it will be helpful for the small and medium organizations as well as the startups. So today, Mr. Abid Chaudhary is with us, and he is the founder director of the Idea Factory. Basically, he works into uh, thought leadership area. So we'll take ahead our discussion in that direction. So let me start our discussion by asking some questions. So basically, why do organizations actually fall after starting or after starting 3 years of their operations? Basically, so why do the organization basically?
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. We are back with another program. And as our viewers may have noticed that this is our fifth program on the series on thought leadership. And just to reinforce, so we are following different topics in different sessions. So today we are discussing the topic called count your bullets before being fired. Now, I'm sure many of you would have heard this kind of phrase, may not have the exact phrase, but this kind of phrase. And there is a proverb which says that do not count your chickens before they are hatched. This is a proverb coming from Aesop, which actually says that before the actual results come out, do not start preparations because you do not know what will be the final output. So until and unless you see a final output, you just don't prepare for the entire thing. That means if you have 30 eggs in your basket, you don't start preparing for 30 eggs, 30 chickens. Okay, let them come out, see how many come out, and then you work accordingly. On the back of it, there's one more book that has come out several years back by reputed author Dr. Arindam Chaudhary, which says, "Count your chickens before they are hatched," which is a counter mechanism for count your of the ESOP, which says that you should prepare yourself for from the business perspective. It was a business book, and you have to prepare yourself for what is the final outcome, and don't wait for the outcome to happen. So these are two different contradictory thoughts that are evolving. And today we're talking on a similar topic, which is called count your bullets before being fired, which also means that before firing the bullet, you should count, which means that once your work is being done, while you go out to the outside world, you better be prepared yourself and then act accordingly. If you do not know what your capabilities are, what your resources are, what is this overall capability of the entire organization, don't go out and start getting assignments. I think that would be a starting point for today's discussions. And these are interesting topic to discuss today. And let me answer your question, try to answer your question, Mr. Mukherjee, as to why do organizations fail. Now, organizations are successful all the time, and they are failing also all the time. While we hear the headlines about a lot of successes, there are a lot of failures also happen along the way. And there are multiple reasons. It's like it's a downward spiral. The organizations go to downward spiral across various situations, and slowly they come to a failure. Now there are multiple things that you read, but I'll tell you share one experience of mine. I was working in a very reputed organization, and it was a sunrise industry. It was rising very fast, and the company also belonged to a very reputed group. So there was no reason why the company would not be successful. They had deep pockets. They were trying to be at the right place at the right time, and lot of resources were there, there was a team, there was people, there were products in place, but somehow this organization could not rise up to the occasion for the entire sunshine period. The sunshine period of the industry lasted for about, if you look at the industry life cycle, I think it lasted about 10 years. And during the 10 years, somehow the company could not position itself, and somehow it failed over a period of time. Now, if I look back as to the reasons why this company failed, there could be many reasons, but the reasons that maybe come to my mind, first of all, that the company, first of all, the positives, it was very good. As I told you, it had a lot of, it's a team, it had a focus, it had direction, it had a good MD also. But the industry was very, very dynamic. Okay, which means that it was rising very fast and the growth was, very, very fast. Somehow the company was not moving very fast. Okay, in the process that people were buying the products, but if you're not there at the customer's hands, the customer will automatically go for some other product. Somehow the company did not grow faster, and in the process, the competition grew so fast that they actually took away all the new customers that were there and built up their economies of scale. So over a period of time, if you see what happened was the industry grew very fast. The people they wanted this product like it was a buying spree, but somehow the company was not there at the right time, and so the products were not selling. Okay. So the company, the revenues were not coming. Obviously, the growth is linked to your revenues and profitability, and those things were not happening. Secondly, another thing that came to my mind, that because the industry was growing, there were strong competition around. Somehow the company was not able to position itself with a very unique proposition. They had a proposition which was kind of a, but people could not slot it to something why they should go for it over competition, which means why the main competitive advantage or the differentiator was missing. So it had all the features which competition had, but it had to have something more. That was also kind of missing, and I felt that was also there. Also, the marketing was also connected, which means the communication was not very strong. It was not going out that it is a better product compared to competition, and somehow people could not choose it over the competition. So whoever bought it for the group name, but not for the product. But if you buy it for the group name, it will not have the economies of scale that your product will have. So in the whole process, it went for a very long period. It got over leveraged. It took debt like everybody else. It took equity like everybody else. But if your revenues don't come, if your customers don't come, if your profitability don't come, suddenly you are in a debt trap. You are your balance sheet is flooded with a lot of loan, and you are not able to service it because your profitability is not coming. So you start gradually go into a downward spiral, and you have a lot of debt to service. There are people, stakeholders in the whole process, but if the customers are somehow not picked up at the right time, somehow the company could not grow, and it kind of failed over a period of time. Today, I when I was there, it was failing. It would had not failed, but now today, in today's scenario, the company has surely failed. Okay, so that means that it has reached a situation, it no longer exists as within the top few. The industry has consolidated. There are only 2 3 players in the industry, and the company does not figure in the whole process. And somehow I think today it has tied up with the bigger players, and somehow is surviving in some way or the other. But it has, compared to the potential that it had not been able to leverage that potential to grow to the greater. On the top of that, the competition, what happened was, there were players who were kind of new. They did not have the brand image of this company. But what happens? They grew so fast. They also had to have deep pockets, but they acquired customers so fast. The speed was very important. So in the whole process, since they did not have the speed, they could not pick up, and it kind of failed. So this is kind of example of a very big customer, not a very small one, as which could not leverage or seize the opportunity that was available in the market at that point in time. So maybe it
That,
answers that
yeah.
question in some way.
So that's very nice. So you spoke about a big organization. So as we are serving basically the SME space, in the small and medium enterprise space. And we have seen in various kind of the reports that only 10% or less than 10% means on startups actually means become successful. So why is it so? Means why is the actually problem, and why do they fail basically to become a larger organization? Because it become means like from a caterpillar to a butterfly. So why doesn't it happen?
Yeah. Coming back to startups and smaller organizations, I think we have to look at it. There could be. Let me try to handle it in two parts. One is why 10% of the organizations succeed, and followed by why 90% of the organizations fail. Now, if you ask why 10% of organizations succeed, certain amount of qualities that we have discussed in the earlier question are already valid out here. On top of that, what happened was the successful guys are the ones which are very clear of their passion for the product. So actually they are motivated, they are motivated, and they stay connected to their committed to their purpose for till they reach a particular stage of success. Okay, so that commitment or perseverance is very important, number one. Number two, also we feel that they have the right product at the right time, which means there certain amount of research has gone into it. And in the whole process, if the research is done well, the product definitely has some unique features which they are able to solve, which means they solve certain problems which are existing in the market. So assuming the product or the service is a problem solver in the market, and also you scale it up, move quite fast, automatically the success will gradually come. Also, if your revenue, if your, as we discussed in the previous question, if your customers start coming quickly, what happens, your revenues and profitability start coming, you get the freedom to plan your marketing activities. Okay, so you have a budget for marketing, you get the right people in place, and so many things which that goes into building a slightly bigger organization. You cannot afford good people if you have not reached a certain amount of size. So if you get your system space, so you start with a small set of customers, you service them well, go to the next level, and slowly your team size increases with better and better people. Because obviously whenever you are startups do have to pay a bit more than regular organizations and the bigger ones, because startups don't give them the brand cushion, so they attract people with a slightly higher salary. Okay, and for them to offer a slightly higher salary, their revenues and profitability have to be high. So it's actually a very fine balance between growth and taking it to the next level. The marketing, the communication, the website, the digital. Today you have everything digital. So all these conditions go into making a and they are very passionate about the product, which also means that they are multiple player partners. It could be a co-partner. Generally, two people are there initially. Whenever you have a startup, generally two people are their co-partners, and both share the passion of growth. And if the passion of growth and the dream of making it big comes faster, quickly you will be able to gain up the economies of scale, and slowly the other things will, the short term processes will give you the fuel for the long term growth. So these are the positive parameters that you can see for a successful organization, from a startup to a medium to a large organization. In terms of failures, if you automatically, of course, these are the reverse parameters, which means that they don't have these qualities. But also you have to remember that one of the major things that happens is that they if they take too much of time to grow, they run out of the cash. Okay, which means that if you have a certain amount of funds when you start the business, and you do not grow fast enough, or you do not acquire the customers at the right time, what happens, you start burning your cash, because expenses will keep on coming. You have to do this, you have to do that, and if your revenues or profitability do not give you, suddenly you run out of cash, and you have no other option but to close the organization. Okay, so so that way you have to if you are not very fast, that is also one. Also, if there are, whether you got a co-partner, if you are running solo, then also might take a bit smaller time. I mean, survey has said that people with co-partners, businesses with co-partners run faster, because one pulls the other. Both of them, they put their stakes into the whole process, and one pulls the other. Also, there is a question of as we have told you about funding. Okay, and most startups, they try to get for the funding, and it happens that if they even if they get the funding, please remember it is someone else's money. If it is someone else's money, and then you have to focus on the operational strength and not on the long term growth. Initially, you have to have a short term model in place, which means that something that will give you revenue and profitability fast, because you have to return that money to him. He has some stakes in the business. He is not the owner of the business. Okay, he has a financial investor. So if he puts in X amount of money, he will want X plus Y. Okay, for that to service that amount of money, you have to have a stronger operational plan within the business, and then only you go for the medium term or the long term. So there are cases where people have gone for the funding part, either from venture capitalists or uh, angel investors or whatever. Either they take up a stake in the organization, or you have to service the loan. Either way, you have to grow very fast, because if they have a stake, they will also have a say in how you run the organization. And also, if you have a debt, then you have to return the owner. Both ways, you are answerable to them. Okay, so if you have a certain source, if you are answerable to them, your direction will you may have to change direction of the organization, which means it may not run the way you want it. It has to be done collectively, and once it runs collectively, there are chances that viewpoints might differ, and the right programs and plans are not in place. Time is lost, and you may not go to the path. If there are multiple people, taking decisions, or you have to take permissions for so many people, obviously it is a slow process, and many times decisions are not being taken because people pull in different directions. So in that case, it's quite a balance, and quite a challenge to convert to move from a startup phase to an MSME phase to a large organization. Not everybody can do it.
That is there. That is very true. So the thing is that it's very important that to count the resource and also the speed of the conversion of those resources. For a small organization or the medium-sized organization, it's very important for them to count the speed of, because otherwise, if we actually slow in means delivering or making converting the resources or providing the resources, so probably we'll be losing in the market space. So my next question is that how thought leadership can help the small and medium business owners in this kind of business
Very
when
good
they are
question.
not basically when they are not having that kind of the approach to actually calculate their resources or put their resources into a proper direction in a proper time or the channelize their resources in a proper direction. So how thought leadership can help them in this direction.
Right. I think what this is a very good question, especially in this platform, because we are linking thought leadership to the growth of an organization. And yes, I think startups are thought leadership is a very gives them an added fuel to grow from the smaller size to the bigger size. By that we mean that organizations, or say individuals, should spend sufficient time delving on the issue of the product or service that they are going to offer. This we have already discussed in the previous sessions also, but we are repeating it again here, that your product or the service, until and unless you do a certain amount of research, and until and unless you have to ensure that you bring out a product or a service which is quite in demand in the market. Okay, and for that certain amount of research is product, you have to do a test marketing in the whole process, and see whether customers are liking it, improve the whole process, and then scale it up. Okay, so that's one approach in which your product or the service has to be very relevant, very contemporary, and addresses certain current problems in the whole process. Secondly, you should not be looking at replicating what others are doing, which means that you should not look at building an organization which is similar to a large organization. People do come with experiences, and if you just want to copy the experiences, that is perhaps not a very wise decision. You have to take learnings from your experiences and build up a model, business model, which is relevant, which is applicable to your resources or your capabilities. So in that case, you might have to tweak with the business model, and accordingly you have your product or the service. So either you are asset heavy, or you are asset light, you outsource certain portions, and you buy certain product, what you will outsource, what you will keep it to yourself, what you will what where you will put in the money, and what is the priority of activities is something that will vary from startup to startup. Okay? So that's one. Secondly, we feel that a business model has to be in place, which means from start to the revenue to profitability, the entire roadmap has to be chalked out beforehand. Before you start something, like we would say that you should have at least a 5 year roadmap in front of you before you put in your own money. You are the investor, you are the startup guy. I'm not saying investor, you are the startup person. So if you are taking a big leap out of your regular job and stepping, you should have at least a 5 year roadmap in front of you as to what you are starting with and how you will go to the in 5 years where you want to go. That roadmap is actually very necessary so that you don't run around building up a business model in place. These should always be ready. You should actually have at least 100 questions regarding your business across all functions, all product, customers, services, how you're going to build it up. The entire plan can be the 5 year roadmap can be done with around 100 questions, and you can work according to the plan. That doesn't mean that your plan and actuals will be the same. Your actuals may significantly vary from your plan, but the plan will guide you, which means that you may go slow, but the plan will actually guide you to go or change. Even if you have to change directions, if you have to go from one direction to the other, since you've already done the whole process before, to tweak it, to take the change the direction, that will be easier for you rather than learning it along the way. I think that is one important process that we want to do. And innovation, or new thoughts, new ideas, new processes have to be an integral part of this entire business model, because today's businesses are not static. It has never been static, of course. But today, if you are not innovative on the spot, and if you are in a very dynamic industry which changes every day, of course, you have to be very smart. You have to have tweaks or changes within a half day of the program. That's what my experience shows. If you do not have that speed, that within half day I'm going to change my product features and launch, and at the same time launch it in the market, that means you are not you will not be able to fight out with the competition. So these are the two small things that you have. You may not be going very big at this time, but you have create your own small world, but play within that small world, and then be successful in that small. Even if you have 100 customers to acquire, you should get those 100 customers, because the customer always chooses you over the competition. And if they choose you over the competition and then you retain them over a period of time, that 100 customers will tomorrow will be 200 customers. So play your role well to have a small set of pilot which does well, and then take it to the next level, and then slowly take it to the next level. So remember that the model has to be dynamic. It has to be the services or the products have to be innovative. Build best practices. Okay, another thing that I want to tell you is that we are seeing a lot of malpractices to succeed. There are news headlines which they say that somewhere down the line businesses have actually cut corners, and that's how they have grown. Now please ensure that in order to run the race, you do not cut corners and set bad examples in the industry. Okay? There are enough people who have already created bad examples by their unethical practices. So my request to businesses is not to. You might be smart, you might be doing the best the decisions to get the whole process, but do not cut corners and build a business by unethically. Okay, so it's better
That
to go slow.
basic, basically it doesn't happen in the long run, because if you are running the organization in an unethical way, it's not going to be sustainable. Some point of the time it will be broken. So
Right.
actually the profit or the money, whatever the wealth, basically the wealth, if someone looks for that, so they cannot survive, because means wealth or the profit always is a byproduct of what product or service they are actually delivering. So if somebody is looking for that and they are doing any kind of the malpractices, they are not going to be sustainable for the long run. That's for very, I mean, that's sure. So coming to the fact that here, so how that means thought leadership. And thought leadership is actually helping the organization concept to help the organization in various directions. It is a well-known kind of the concept, but why is it not that it has not got that much of acceptability till now? And what means we can do to make it more accessible to the organization and in turn help the entrepreneurs to realize their dreams.
Right. I think we are talking to a lot of individuals, organizations, solopreneurs, consultants, and I see a lot of enthusiasm on thought leadership, which means that people are somehow keen to know what thought leadership offers to them. Okay, so it may be a recent trend. Maybe we are again at the right place at the right time, but maybe it was not there before. But now that we are talking to a lot of people and networking with a lot of people, people are taking a lot of interest on thought leadership and innovation and what new products that we can offer. They are discussing with us, and we are at various levels of discussions with them to show how it can impact their businesses in the long run. India has never been known for innovation, okay? But today, if you look at Corona, if you are not innovative, you will not be able to rebuild your business which you have lost during the Corona. Okay, so maybe for their survival, they are talking to us, and thought leadership it becomes an important tool or an important concept. I would say it's still not a tool, it's an important concept that they are talking to us, and we are trying to build a program around thought leadership. And through innovation, through organizations in India, that is what my experience have been operationally very heavy. Maybe they have not reached a stage wherein they are spending enough time, 20-30% of their time on strategic issues, and remaining 70% on operations. It doesn't happen in a day. Maybe we are at situations where we are 90% operational and maybe 10% strategic. So, which means the entire attention, resources, energy goes into resolving firefighting, resolving issues that are there in the market. And perhaps innovation comes in that way. We have to pull ourselves and we have to say that these are the problems which I remember when we are in a mature organization, they were handling very small, menial, petty issues which I never thought would be handled by large organizations. Like, the bills not being reached or the wrong billing part of it. These are hygiene issues. If you look from innovation perspective, if you are still struggling with things like that your customer is getting wrong bills, even banks transfer wrong funds, there are issues that we are saying that someone's money has gone to someone's account. After so much of automation, I still don't understand how someone's money can goes into someone's account. Okay, so these are all issues, operational issues that are happening, and we have to rise above them. If you have to be innovative, if you have to have thought leadership, you have to have perhaps separate teams between the two. I'm not saying you're not going to handle it, but perhaps you have to have separate teams with between the two, or you have to mix both of them in such a way that both go hand in hand. But thought leadership today remains or becomes a very important concept that organizations need to be sustainable in the long run. Every business has to have a mission or a vision that I will be the number one in my industry in the next 5 to 10 years. Every business should have that mission or vision. And if they want to be the number one or number two in the business, they will have to rise above their operational issues. If you're still struggling with vehicles that are not being maintained by the maintenance issues, and people have not been reached, and parts have not there is a delay by one day. If you are still operationally working on those points, you will be forever working on that operational loop. Okay, there will be organizations in India who will take innovation forward, and if there are organizations will continue to be operational, they will be lagging behind, because operations will become hygiene. If there are automations available, there are people who would keep on we will have to automate things that and we are doing so many things. So you have to take your eyes away from the firefighting and bring new products and services on the table. you will be only then your thought leadership will actually give you the medium term and the long term growth. So your short term growth, if you are focusing, let the growth, but slowly take your vision out to a medium term or a long term, in your next 5 year gaze, in your next 10 years and your next 20 years. Even the country today, I was seeing that we are talking of about 30, 40 year horizon. And that is a very good sign, because for a country, we have always been working on a year on year basis. And the 5 year plan or a 10 year plan has always been a lip service. Today, I think even the country is talking of a 30, 40 year plan horizon. And that is a great step towards a sustainable growth of a country, because that will also build up an overall economic model. Businesses can play around, so businesses can have a vision of again 30, 40 years, because the policies are clear, the talks are in that direction. So you will have to have a bigger time frame to work on, but still work on a 5 year plan. So have a 5 year plan in place, and innovation will decide whether you become the number one or number two in the world.
That
I think that is the yeah.
so we'll wrap up our discussion. Thanks, Mr. Majumdar, being a part of our discussion. Now, my request is that in our next discussion, we'll be actually talking about the service that we are going to offer from your end and from my end also. Because as you are working from in the field of the thought leadership, and I'm working on the strategic dimension. So, what we can offer. So probably when we meet next time, so we will offer, and definitely that will be also kind of the this chargeable kind of the service that we are going to offer for our clients. So in the next when we meet, so we'll be discussing those things in detail. So what kind of the service that we are going to offer from your end and from also my end. So I'm combining that our the people who will be interested to get our services and take the benefit out of that, they definitely should contact me. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having in our discussion. So we'll wrap up. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.